My name is Olivia, and I'm 40 years old. I've been married to my husband Michael for 10 years. We used to work together, but now we're in different branches. Michael is responsible at work and well-liked by his team. He's confident and ambitious, always wanting to look strong in front of others. I'm more quiet and don't stand out much. It surprised me when Michael, with his strong personality, showed interest in me. After dating for 2 years, he proposed to me with a big bunch of roses. I felt so loved and agreed right away. I looked forward to our future together. But then he surprised me again by saying we live with his parents. I wasn't sure about it, but he was determined. He assured me his parents were nice and excited about us living together, so I agreed in the end. For the past 10 years, I've been living with my in-laws in my husband's house, which was not what I expected when I got married. Every morning starts with my mother-in-law's nagging about little things like cleaning the front door. Even though I make breakfast for everyone, her complaints never end. I apologize and rush to fix it while she heads off to work, leaving me feeling like a servant. Living here means waking up at 5 a.m. to cook and clean, even though my mother-in-law, who stays at home, doesn't lift a finger to help. After rushing through chores, I go to work, and when I come back home, it's straight to making dinner. I'm so tired by bedtime that I often fall asleep instantly. This routine leaves me feeling constantly exhausted and stressed. My mother-in-law lounges in the living room, enjoying the breakfast I made, while reminding me to clean properly so the neighbors won't think poorly of her. It's a cycle that never seems to end. Despite everything, my husband never defends me, and my father-in-law ignores the mistreatment, burying himself in his newspaper. Since I moved in with my husband's family, I've endured awful treatment. The stress has caused me to lose a lot of weight, and my period stopped, making it impossible for me to conceive. Despite my mother-in-law being the cause, I get blamed for it. I used to take care of myself and cared about my looks, but now I hardly recognize myself. The constant harassment from my mother-in-law and seeing my changed appearance in the mirror have left me deeply depressed. I've become completely submissive to her. I feel so numb that I don't even have the energy to think about leaving this house anymore. I received heartbreaking news. My father had passed away suddenly in an accident. I hadn't visited my family home in a long time because both my husband and mother-in-law would scold me whenever I mentioned wanting to go there. Hearing about my father's death, I deeply regretted not spending more time with him. My family home isn't too far, about an hour's drive from my in-laws' place. So I asked my husband and mother-in-law to come to the funeral. I need to go to my father's funeral, I told them. But before I could finish, they coldly replied, "We're not going. Let your family handle it." Their heartlessness stunned me, trembling with anger and grief. All I could manage was to say, "Understood." Many people gathered at my father's funeral. He was self-employed and had many connections, so there were tears all around, showing how loved he was. My mother, whom I hadn't seen in a while, was shocked by how much weight I had lost. "Olivia, what happened to you? You look so thin," she exclaimed worriedly. "Are you sick?" Seeing my worn-out appearance, she burst into tears, fearing she would lose me too. Given her fragile state after my father's death, it wasn't unexpected. "No, Mom, I'm not sick. Please don't worry," I reassured her. I tried to comfort her and took a moment to myself in the waiting room. "If you're not sick, then what's wrong?" My mother's concern prompted me to reflect on my interactions with my husband and mother-in-law. Their lack of comfort or support, even during my father's death, fueled my anger. I decided to confide in my mother about the challenges I face living with my in-laws. Actually, I've been dealing with what feels like bullying from my mother-in-law. It's really taking a toll on me, I admitted, feeling down. My mother's expression turned worried as she looked at me. "I'm glad you're not sick, but this news doesn't ease my mind. Is that why you haven't been visiting me?" she asked. "Yes," I nodded, confirming her suspicion. My mother handed me a piece of paper and said, "Take a look at this for yourself. Then think carefully about what to do next." When I looked at the paper, I realized it was my father's will. He was always meticulous, so he had prepared one just in case. The will mentioned inheritance. It says I inherit $2 million. I murmured in shock at the large sum. Suddenly, I felt a glimmer of hope. With this, I could build my own house and leave my in-laws' place right away, I thought excitedly. Thanks to the inheritance from my father, things started looking up for me. Back at my in-laws' place, I continued with the household chores as usual. But on days when I had plans, the house tended to get messier since there was no one else to clean up. As I quietly went about my tasks, my mind kept drifting to the $2 million I had inherited. Despite my strained relationship with my mother-in-law, I still wanted to stay with my husband, Michael. So one night after his parents had gone to bed and it was just the two of us, I decided to have an honest conversation about the inheritance and leaving the in-laws' home. There's something I want to talk about, I began, trying to break the silence. Michael looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to continue. Yeah, about my father. Actually, I've come into an inheritance, I said. Of how much? Michael asked. Well, it's $2 million, I replied. Michael's face lit up with excitement. He left you that much. That's generous. But about how to use this money, he trailed off, indicating he wanted to discuss our options. I was about to bring up the main topic, feeling relieved that Michael seemed to be in a good mood. But before I could speak, he suggested something outrageous. We need to transfer that money to my mom's bank account right away, he said. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was so absurd that I thought he must be joking. No, why would we do that? The inheritance is mine, so it wouldn't be right to give it to your mom. I laughed, hoping he was just teasing. Michael slammed the table in anger. What are you talking about? A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law. His words were so absurd that I couldn't believe he was serious. His expression was stern, and it sent a chill down my spine. I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you're saying. All I wanted to do was suggest building a house for us to live together. I tried to explain, but Michael wouldn't let me speak. He insisted on claiming my inheritance for his mother. That night, I couldn't sleep well because of the shock. The next morning, while I was making breakfast, both Michael and my mother-in-law approached me with angry expressions. Olivia, I heard about it. You inherited $2 million, and you said you won't give it to me. Who do you think you are? My mother-in-law exclaimed, adding to my distress. My mother-in-law had already heard of the inheritance from Michael. But I'm the one who inherited it, I protested. Stop arguing and transfer it to my parents' account now. A daughter-in-law's money is our money. Their determination to claim the inheritance by any means was clear. No matter how much I resisted, they continued to blame me. Realizing my resistance was futile, I fell silent. That's when Michael showed me a piece of paper. You're getting carried away because you've come into some money. I'm the one who's been supporting you. If you don't change your attitude, it's divorce, he said, threateningly. The paper turned out to be a divorce form. I've already signed it. Take this and go back to your parents' house. If you apologize properly, I might reconsider the divorce, Michael said, his tone firm. As I received the divorce form with Michael's part fully filled in, memories flooded my mind. I realized that I had never received any financial support in this house. I had been contributing equally to the living expenses, and all the household chores fell on my shoulders. Despite my efforts, they had always treated me poorly. Now they were even attempting to take my father's money. Feeling pressured to give up my father's inheritance if I stayed, being told to leave actually felt like an opportunity. Holding the divorce papers, I realized that the decision about my future was mine to make. I vowed to never surrender my father's legacy, and I made up my mind. After finishing work that day, I returned home. I'm home, welcome back. My mother greeted me with a warm smile. Despite my exhaustion, a home-cooked meal awaited me on the table. It had been so long since I had eaten a meal made by someone else. With each bite of the delicious food, tears of gratitude welled up in my eyes. Did you tell your husband about the inheritance? My mother asked. Yes, and it caused quite a stir, I replied, recounting everything my husband and mother-in-law had said to me. My mother was speechless at the shocking revelation. The inheritance belongs to you, and only you should decide your future. She comforted me gently as I cried. After being cared for at my parents' home for a week, I made the decision to return to my in-laws' house. Well, I'm heading back now. Take care, I said confidently, no longer afraid to face the challenges there. With a renewed sense of strength, I went back to my in-laws' house. Finally, Becca, have you reflected on your behavior? As soon as I returned to my in-laws' house, my husband and mother-in-law confronted me with stern expressions and crossed arms. Yes, I apologize. Please allow me to stay in this house again. I offered a shallow apology. My mother-in-law's face lit up with anticipation. Well then, hand over the inheritance quickly, she demanded. Actually, the inheritance process is taking longer than expected. I haven't received it yet. It's a complex procedure, so it might take another 6 months or so, I explained. 6 months? That long? My mother-in-law's disappointment was evident. Well, fine, she reluctantly accepted. Both my mother-in-law and husband appeared satisfied, thinking their plan was still on track. I obediently handed over the inheritance as they demanded. However, they kept nagging about me spending a week at my parents' house. You're neglecting your duties as a wife. The house is a mess, clean it up quickly, they insisted. Despite the incredibly messy and unhygienic conditions at my in-laws' house, it was almost impressive how quickly they could make such a mess in just a week. I understood their demands. In the past, I would have been deeply upset to see the house in such a state, but now, I didn't care. No matter how much my mother-in-law bullied me or how hard the housework was, it didn't bother me anymore. I simply did as my mother-in-law ordered without letting it affect me. It's my mother-in-law's birthday, so I'll be leaving. Make sure to keep the house clean, my mother-in-law announced, as she always went on a trip for her birthday. Naturally, I wasn't invited. By the way, have you received the inheritance yet? It's supposed to come in today, my husband asked. How convenient. That $2 million can be a birthday present for Mom. Don't forget to transfer it to Mom's account before we get back, my mother-in-law added. It seemed too perfect that my mother-in-law's birthday lined up with the inheritance arrival. My husband couldn't see through my deception. Without a word, I saw them off with a smile, saying, "Take care." As soon as they were out of sight, I sprang into action, ready to execute my plan that I'd been waiting for so long. They'll be in for a surprise when they return from their trip. But I no longer have to concern myself with their reactions. Quickly, I packed my belongings and left my husband's family home behind. Wow, this is incredible, I exclaimed as I moved my things into my new home. Thanks to my father's inheritance, I had been able to build this house. I felt so happy to be living in such a beautiful place, and I decided to share it with my mother, who lives in my hometown. I felt a deep sense of relief knowing I no longer had to worry about those people. Sinking into the plush sofa, I felt content. Today was a celebration of my new home with my mother. We even invited a chef to cook for us, and we spent the day indulging in luxury. The next evening, my husband called me, his voice full of frustration. What the hell is going on? He demanded, clearly confused by the empty house he returned to. I won't be coming back there. Goodbye, I said firmly, trying to end the conversation without further discussion. But my mother-in-law's angry voice came through the phone. What are you doing? Where are you now? She demanded to know. I can't tell you that. You asked me to clean the house, so I packed up my belongings, I replied calmly. That's not a funny joke. Plus, you didn't transfer the inheritance. How many times do I have to tell you that the daughter-in-law's money is mine? She shouted. Huh, I'm single, I retorted. Suddenly, my yelling mother-in-law fell silent. Single? She echoed. Well, I'm a divorcee. I was handed a divorce paper, so I submitted it. I'm a stranger to you now. Goodbye, I said, ending the call abruptly. I couldn't help but laugh, picturing my mother-in-law's stunned face on the other end of the line. I felt a huge sense of relief to be free from that family. Afterward, I received numerous calls from my ex-husband. When I had some free time, I deliberately answered the phone and ignored the insults from my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. I made sure to record all those calls. I decided to seek advice from the police with those recordings. Harassment from an ex-husband is unfortunately common, but it's important to address it before it escalates. Thankfully, the police responded promptly and went to warn my ex-husband's family. For my ex-family-in-law, who valued their public image, just having the police show up was damaging enough. Additionally, a subordinate of my ex-husband who lived in the neighborhood witnessed the police visit. Since my ex-husband was a prominent figure in the company, rumors spread rapidly. Furthermore, colleagues and subordinates who harbored resentment towards my ex-husband began to spread negative gossip about him. Eventually, the rumor made its way to my department. Did you hear about the police visit? My colleagues whispered amongst themselves. I'm divorced now, so I'm not really in the loop, I replied loudly enough for others to hear. The gossip-loving employees eagerly spread the news further. It didn't take long for the rumor to reach my ex-husband's boss. You've been the subject of a lot of negative rumors, haven't you? His boss remarked. What are you talking about? My ex-husband protested. I can't tolerate men who don't appreciate their wives. Furthermore, with these damaging rumors circulating, it will tarnish our company's reputation. Therefore, I've decided to transfer you, his boss declared. The transfer order issued to my ex-husband was severe. Wait, this place is, my ex-husband began, realizing it was a branch office in the least productive region. There's no entertainment around whatsoever. It's like being on a deserted island. Do you understand what this means? His boss continued. Everything my ex-husband had worked for up to that point crumbled, and there was no hope of advancement in the future. Unable to decline the transfer order, my ex-husband had no choice but to relocate to this rural area. As for my ex-mother-in-law, she was likely shocked by her son's tarnished reputation and the fact that she could no longer live with him. This led her to become reclusive and ultimately develop depression. There were also concerns about dementia, as she frequently caused disturbances at home. My ex-father-in-law now finds himself in the difficult position of caring for his drastically changed wife. Even without blood ties, a daughter-in-law is still a valuable family member, he often remarked. The challenges faced by my former in-laws could be seen as karma for the harassment they inflicted on me. Now, unhappily living with my mother, we've even taken up gardening in our spacious yard. If I had remained in that house, I might never have discovered this wonderful hobby. Embracing this hobby has revitalized me. My body, once worn down by stress, is now healthy again. I'm grateful to have severed ties with my former in-laws and found true happiness.